From EPAWA Weather Consulting, headquartered in Worth Whitehall, Pennsylvania, this is Weather Weeklies, an informative video of the ins and outs of weather that affect you most in the EPAWA coverage area. The thoughts and opinions expressed in this video are those of the forecaster alone and may not reflect those of the staff of EPAWA Weather Consulting LLC as a whole, nor its constituents. Now, without further ado, here is meteorologist Bobby Martrich with Weather Weeklies.
Good Sunday morning to another edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, February 26th. A lot to talk about today, and it's going to be dealing with some short-term wintry threats, two of them, in fact, this week that we're going to be watching closely, and we'll also look at the pattern ahead going into March, which does not look warm. But I want to get right into the video today because we have a lot to talk about. So this is what we have for our long-range table here on Friday. A lot of ups and downs through the first week of March, but then once we reach the second week of March and beyond, it is colder than average, most notably during the third week of March. I think you're going to be solidly below average there, and that might actually start a little earlier than the 14th, as I indicate here on the chart, which I did on Friday. But we have a couple systems moving in here, and one's going to be Monday night, and coming in late Monday afternoon and then overspreading the region through the evening. There's going to be some snow involved with that. There's going to be some sleet, some rain. I don't really think too much in the way of freezing rain, but there is a lot of snow and sleet for some areas. And then our best areas to see snow from that's pretty much a slam dunk across Northeast PA, Northern New Jersey, and I'll identify that in today's video. We also have a winter storm signal around the 3rd and 4th. That is still there. But there's a lot of uncertainty with that, and I'll cover that here in the video today, too. Here's what average snowfall is in February, even with this little end-of-month heroics here, so to speak. I don't think you're getting back to near average, okay? So a lot of these areas will still be below average regardless of what happens. And some of these areas will get into some snow, to include the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area and Allentown here most notably, and Newark. Those three areas most notably. The other areas probably not, maybe a little bit in Harrisburg, but a lot of that is going to be sleet. I think we are going to have a map out for this today. That's going to come out later this afternoon. 4 or 5 o'clock. I haven't decided which time yet, but it's going to be somewhere around then. We have to update the form first, then we send the alerts to the My Pocket Meteorologist customers, and then we go from there. Okay, so here's where we are year-to-date snowfall. We did have a little bit of snow yesterday, half-inch recorded here in Northeast PA, so that is the only number that came up since I did the video last week. So at 11.4 is your total now in the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area. All the other areas remain the same, and this is where you are supposed to be year-to-date, so we're obviously well behind, and that is not a surprise for anybody. So we get into Monday night, okay? So this is the setup for this system. This is actually very similar to the system we had this past Wednesday. The only difference is now we have a secondary involved with this, and we have a little bit of cold air damming with this time. So areas further north and east you get across our region will actually benefit the most from that. You can tell on this image here that see if you follow these black lines here, the black lines on the image, see how they're kinked in like this? These are kinked in. That means you have a cold air damming source coming in when you have the isobars kinked like that. So that is telling me that you're going to have snow to start because it'll be cold enough for that, and then you're going to have, it probably goes over to sleet in a lot of areas and then back to snow. And the boundary, unlike last Wednesday, instead of just being able to plow through, because this area low pressure was the primary on Wednesday, you had a warm front associated with it. We still do with this one. And it was able to plow right through the region. We're not going to have that happen this time because you have cold air damming offsetting that. So you're working against that, and a lot of that is due to the secondary that's forming, trying to keep that boundary from just plowing through the region like we had last week. So that's the difference between Wednesday and today. Otherwise, if this wasn't here and you didn't have the cold air damming source, it would be very similar. Okay, so it would be maybe an inch or so of snow, or maybe 2 up near the New York-Pennsylvania border, then everybody would change over rain, and that would be it. It would be very mild, right? Well, this is not what's going to happen with this one because of these other factors that are in play here. So here is what the high-resolution rapid refresh has is the 12Z run this morning. Just to give you an idea of precipitation type, you get snow over these areas, over the eastern areas. Then you do change over to sleet and maybe even change over or mix with or change over to sleet in the marginal areas. So the marginal areas are going to have to be watched very closely because that can go either way. You could either have more snow or you could have more sleet, which is going to dictate snow amounts. So if you're up here in Northeast PA, Northern New Jersey, you're pretty solidly, for most of the event, in snow, especially far northern New Jersey and the elevations of Northeast PA. For that reason, you'll have more snow there, and we're confident about snow in those areas. But you will get some snow here in north central PA, north of I-78, all the way down to the Lehigh Valley. I think you get some snow out of this, and then central New Jersey and points north will get into some of that too. So if you draw a line from, say, Trenton to Freehold, New Jersey, that's probably your cutoff right now. We'll see. I want to look at some more things that are coming in this morning, and we'll come out with our first map this afternoon, obviously. Here's what the European model has. It's been the most aggressive with the snowfall totals, but look at this sharp cutoff. Very sharp cutoff on the southern fringe of that. So if you get to Philadelphia, you're barely get anything, probably nothing at all. Down here in the fringe areas, when we get down to this is where the frontal boundary is. That's what this is. The frontal boundary is just like this. So anything south of there, you might get a lot of this is sleet accumulations right on the fringe. I know it says 1.1 in Harrisburg on the European model, but that's most likely sleet accumulation because it still accumulates. Sleet accumulates. It doesn't accrue like freezing rain does. And I do think you're going to get mostly sleet out of that to get to somewhere close to that. Probably not quite, probably a quarter to an inch there. But you get further north where the cold air damming has an effect. And remember, it's coming in from the north and east. So these areas up here in northeast PA, northern New Jersey, especially northwest New Jersey here, are getting into some pretty decent snow. And it's able to get all the way down to the Lehigh Valley and northern Pennsylvania here. Because it's on the colder side of that boundary. It's always been the last couple of weeks. I've been saying ad nauseum in the daily forecast videos that this is going to be a gradient where the gradient sets up, and this gradient in this case is going to affect the northern half of the region here with snow, and we will get some snow accumulation. I will tell you, I live in the northern part of Lehigh Valley. We've had officially at Allentown Lehigh Valley International Airport 2.9 inches of snow this year. Our least snowiest winter was 3 years ago and was 5.3. They have a good shot of keeping that the same record, okay? That it's not going to be with this storm in particular, they might go over that. So you only need 2.5 inches to eclipse that. The European model here is suggesting 5.4. It might be a little high, but here's that. This is the most aggressive model. Here is the least aggressive model. Okay, so I'm not going to parade a bunch of models up here for you. This is the least aggressive to show you the most aggressive as far as southwestward extent or southern extent, and there's the least aggressive. So it just pushes this up about another 30 to 40 miles, or well, about 30 miles. Okay, it pushes it further to the north here on the NAM 3 kilometers. So this is the least aggressive. The most aggressive is the European model, but this one has company. This one here has company from the RGEM, most notably. So we'll see where we trend here for the 12Z runs today before we put any maps or alerts out or anything like that. But I do think we're pretty solid at these areas, especially northeast PA, northern New Jersey, are pretty solid to get some a plowable snowfall out of this. So let's go ahead to the March 3rd, 4th signal, because everybody's asked me about this one, and most people that are asking me are people that are living down here that aren't going to get much out of this. One on Monday night, okay? So they're, getting a little antsy. They're seeing some stuff here in the long range for the 3rd and 4th, and that is a long-range signal, winter storm signal that we have here. So this is a legitimate threat. There is going to be a storm. It's just a matter of, is it going to be snow and for where? And that's still some questions that have to be answered. Here's the GFS and what it does, and it kind of cuts right over I-95 here with the storm here. So any snow would be very far interior in this case in far northern areas before going over to sleet, freezing rain. This is a plausible solution, and so is the European model, which is doing this, which is a much snowier solution further south. Canadian model actually looks a lot like this too, maybe not quite as aggressive with the snowfall amounts, but it still has. Still has mostly snow over our region here. The differences with this system, and this is not something I know right now, not something anybody knows, and if they're saying they know, they're just speculating, and that's it, because I don't care who you are. It doesn't, you can't figure this out just yet. And a lot of this has to do with the blocking. If you look at the GFS, you do have some blocking coming in here over Greenland. It's just starting to come in here, right, on the GFS. And on the European model, the difference between that, just pay attention to where that is. We go over to the European model here, and it looks like that. Okay, so it's a little bit more established. It's almost firmly established here at the time of our storm, which is sitting down here at this time. So if that block is established, it will force everything south a little bit. Okay, and if it forces it south, that will get us on the snowier side of that gradient boundary, because this is still overrunning for this system. I know it looks like a coastal system, and it actually kind of is. Right? It is a coastal system, but this is an overrunning event again. It's just the gradient, it might be a little bit further south, as indicated by the European model here. Gradient is further south. You get snow north of that boundary, and you get more areas involved with snow. So, excuse me. Ultimately, it's going to come down to the blocking and where that sets up, where it is exactly. The models are guessing at this point between GFS, Euro. See how it's firmly established on the Euro? It helps keep everything a little bit further south. That's the really, there's some other minor differences here with these low pressure systems here that are involved, but it really comes down to the blocking, ultimately, what we're dealing with. So blocking is working into the region. This is a byproduct of, in part, a byproduct of the sudden stratospheric warming that took place on the 16th and is now going to be happening again, a reinforcing shot. I'll get to that in a second. But don't pay attention so much to this sudden stratospheric warming part of it, because that's not really running the show. It's the Madden-Julian oscillation. So our current ENSO, which is our La Nina, El Nino, ENSO neutral, we are, as of Monday, we're still in the western regions of the ENSO regions, which is the Central Pacific. We're still kind of teetering around, ENSO neutral and a weak La Nina. Eastern regions, Nino 3 and 1 and 2 are obviously much milder. Okay, these are Nino 3 is ENSO neutral. Nino 1 and 2 is actually in a weak El Nino level here with plus 0.8 Celsius. But if you look at the sea surface temperatures over the last week and the changes, notice those same areas that are colder are now warmer. So I don't think we are in, and I don't need the CPC to officially say, hey, we're in an ENSO neutral now. We're not in La Nina anymore. I don't need them to do that. I'm able to do my own research, okay? And I don't think we're in a La Nina anymore. With that, so La Nina's done, okay? Going into March, certainly. Going into March, we are going to be ENSO neutral, okay? So I think the La Nina is finally dead and done, and that's indicative of these sea surface temperature changes over the last 7 days. Now, it did come up in the eastern areas, but it's already it was weak El Nino territory there. So this is coming back down to planet Earth, and we'll be solidly in an ENSO neutral from this point forward, okay? So we're done with La Nina. As far as I'm concerned, we're done. I don't need somebody else that's a, credible source to confirm that. That's my opinion. That's what you're here for, right? You're not here for somebody else's opinion. So CPC doesn't need to confirm that for me to say we're now an ENSO neutral, okay? ENSO neutral is important because that is going to depend on, that changes some things around as far as the Madden-Julian oscillation is concerned, which is a measure of your convection in the eastern, well, actually globally along the equator, just north of the equator, about 5 degrees north, right? So this is what's, the convection is driving your troughs, your jet streams, your ridges and troughs associated with the jet stream. And if you are in phase 7 in an ENSO neutral, this is a milder phase, okay? This is a warm phase in phase 6, warm phase out here, warm phase out here in the month of March in an ENSO neutral. This is a cold phase when you get to phase 8, 1, 2, and to some extent phase 3, okay? So look where it's going. Right now, Circle of Death, coming into phase during the first week of March, first full week of March, it is in phase 7. That's kind of a milder phase, favoring milder. So we're going to have a lot of ups and downs in the first week of March. And if you're going to get a storm on a 3rd or 4th, this is going to be because of blocking and something that's perfectly timed. You can still get snowstorms in phase 7. It just needs to be timed right and tracked right. Then we go into phase 8 after that point. Both models are doing this. GFS on the left and the European model on the right. The European model is a little bit faster getting it into phase 8 and doesn't spend as long as the GFS does in phase 7. So it's a quicker transition. So what that means is that down the road, we are going to be solidly below average in temperatures. Here's what phase 7 looks like in March, right? And you still have some warmer risks here with the southeast ridge still playing a role. And I think we're going to have that in the first week of March, but it's going to be kind of up and down. It's not going to be solidly warm that entire week, right? So if it's just cold enough, like around that 3rd and 4th period, you can get snow out of it, again, depending on the blocking. You get into phase 8, though, look what it does. A lot colder of a look. A lot colder of a look, okay? So this is going to set up March when we get beyond the first week of March and onward. You're going to be colder than average. Now, it is relative. It's not just a slam dunk. It's going to be brutally cold, 20 highs in the 20s and snow all the time. Doesn't mean that either. It just means colder relative to average and solidly below average is what we're looking at once we get into the 3rd week of March, certainly as a result of this progression. So here's what we were looking at the stratosphere in the past week here. We had this complete zonal wind reversal, and it was projected to go back to neutral again and then tank again with a second hit to the polar vortex, and it becomes more firmly established. This was last week's projection. This is current week, okay? So we're right here. We're right here, All right, so it is still on track. It is still going to do this, and we're going to have a reinforcing shot from the polar vortex disruption, where we're going to have that stratospheric warming becoming a lot more firmly entrenched, and that's going to lead to most likely some blocking. And you can see that here in the response to that in the troposphere. There's always been a question of whether we're going to have a tropospheric response that's going to help us here in North America. Usually, blocking is one of those things that happens. But the Madden-Julian oscillation is running the show. When you're in an ENSO neutral, it is a lot more influential on our pattern than it is in, say, a strong, moderate or strong La Nina or moderate or strong El Nino. It has a lot more influence on the pattern, the Madden-Julian oscillation does, when we are in ENSO neutral. So with this blocking in place that's expected to be here for a while, this goes all the way through the end of the run, maybe gets towards neutral as we get into during the second week of March, okay? But that blocking is going to play a role. But even if you were in just phase 8 without this blocking, without the sudden stratospheric warming, you still have blocking over Greenland in a phase 8 in the month of March in an ENSO neutral. So what's really running the pattern here is that the sudden stratospheric warming event that might be contributing to prolonging it a little bit and keeping the cold air in place all the way into early April. And I can believe that, because usually a sudden stratospheric warming event will last 30 to 45 days as far as influencing the pattern. But phase 8 of the Madden-Julian oscillation gives you strong blocking over Greenland regardless. Okay, so what's running the pattern here? It's not the sudden stratospheric warming that everybody was hyping up and talking about. It did occur, in fairness, but phase 8 of the Madden-Julian oscillation is much more influential. So this is what we do. We turn colder here right around our storm time frame, up and down though. We were warmer prior, and we're warmer after that, right around the 7th or so. Then you see all this cold air come in here for the latter part of that period, and it's going to stay in place here for a while. This is the European Ensemble, the latest run of the European Ensemble, and it goes straight through the end of the run. So colder around our storm time frame, and then you get warm for a couple days, a day or two, right? And then you have this cold come in, and it stays in for a while. Again, this is cold relative to average. The GFS extended, doing something very similar, starts off milder, and then it goes to colder than average temperatures. This runs actually through the end of the month, and the end of the month it shows kind of like near to slightly below average temperatures, but still below average nevertheless. Euro Weeklies doing the same thing, temperate up and down week 1, and then you have this cold come in here, and especially week 3. Before it abates a little bit and just slightly below average end of month, and near to slightly below average to begin April. Okay, so that is our projection. Here is our graphic projection for the long range outlook on Friday for that 12th to 16th period. When you get around just before mid-month and beyond, you get a solidly below average temperatures across most of the nation here, slightly below further south. But this is pretty cold temperatures that are to come in relative to average. This isn't just a couple degrees below. This is well below for that period. So we get any systems coming in here, we can certainly have some more snow events around mid-month or before the equinox, or maybe even just after. That's still possible. And that has happened before. When I put this out on Friday morning, CPC that afternoon came out with this outlook, which is very close to what I have. Okay, so it's almost as if they looked at the outlook, right? And copied. No, they didn't do that. But they agree with me here. So the 3 to 4 week temperature outlook, this actually goes between March 11th and March 24th, has below average. This is a 2-week average. But you look at the precipitation for that period, it's above average with below average temperatures. You can still get some snow events beyond that in a March. So I think March is going to end up not making up for lost time necessarily. It's possible, but I think it's going to be more so repeated chances for snow events during the month of March, when everybody's kind of like gearing towards spring and wanting spring to start. We're finally getting some sense of winter here this month, it looks like. And that's going to actually start at the end of this month, of course, with Monday night system for some areas. Again, we're going to have a map out for that today. Probably 4 or 5 o'clock today. We'll have a map after we send the alerts and do all that stuff in the forum that we do privately. But we're going to be watching that. And then the end of the next week system, which is the 3rd and the 4th time frame, which was next Friday into Saturday. No guarantees with that one. And I know everybody wants to latch on to this right here, which is the European model solution. It has all this snow here, but it's going to depend on that blocking. We don't know what that blocking is going to be just yet, or how strong it's going to be. Does it force it a little bit further south? And that subtle change isn't much. You see the GFS is not that much further north. It just cuts over I-95 instead of being just off the coast. That difference makes a big difference for what we get here from the end of the week system. I do think there's a system there. If the If the blocking ended up being too strong, you would have a solution where it was pushed even further south. It would miss us to the south. That's possible too, but less likely right now. That's not currently shown by any of the guidance, but we'll continue to watch those possibilities in the week ahead. But we want to focus on Monday night, Monday evening, and overnight for our areas that are going to be affected by the wintry system coming in. And so we're watching the next few weeks for a late season wintry heroics in some areas seeing snow, not all areas, but some areas. Still expecting up and down temperatures for the period through the end of the first week of March, okay? And anything happening with that third and fourth system is going to have to be perfectly timed where you have a cooler shot in the middle of that. And then I think after that you warm up for a couple of days, not warm, but warmer for a couple of days. And then we get the real cold come in more consistently below average temperatures second week of March onward. And we're going to have a cool spring start. Most likely. So that's been the theme for the last couple of videos I've done on Sundays and everything I wrote in the long-range outlook pattern discussion. It still continues to be my opinion that winter or spring is going to start off on the colder note this year, unfortunately. How long that lasts? Does this last into May? I don't think so. I hope not. I think it's just early April is going to be a little cooler than average. Not cold, but cooler than average. So we'll continue to watch that in the next couple of weeks, but it doesn't look like Weather Weeklies is going to be ending like it has the last couple of years. We were at the end of February, we were done with Weather Weeklies. It's going to have to continue for a while because we're going to have several chances during the month of March. The entire month or most of the month of March, we'll have Weather Weeklies continue. So I will join you again next Sunday to give you an update of where we're at, even though it's beginning of March, and typically the Weather Weeklies ends at that point, not this year. I'm EPAWA meteorologist Bobby Marchus. That is your outlook for... it's not. No, I'm just giving the close for the daily forecast videos. This edition of Weather Weeklies for Sunday, February 26th. I'll join you again next week, and we'll give you updates, hopefully for that system is coming in possibly at the end of the week that could give some snow to parts of the area. Take care.